when you came out, you referred to Show Off as your second family, but there hasn't been much overlap in a decade. And I've noticed that Statik used to embrace the underground, and now when I see his albums, it's far from the underground. Can I ask you what happened between you and Statik?
You know, that's so funny. That is a really good question, right? Because there's so much irony in this. Here's what happened, you know, and I'm gonna keep it real. When I first got with Statik at the time, you know, it was I understood my role and I understood my place, right? You know, there's terminology, there's Rex, you know, those were the sort of flagship guys, you know what I mean? And then there was me. And with Statik, I mean with Term and Rex, their musical palette was very much reduced to the boom bap. You know, what you get from Term now is what you got back then. You know, same goes for Rex. You know, is the boom bap, you know, 3 verses, scratches, whatever. That's what you got. And same with Statik, right? And that's what they sort of relied on. And that was their bread and butter. That's their brand. With me, I grew up in that. I love it. I can do it. I could rap like that, you know, time and time again. But I also had Bongo, and at the time his name was Tactics. I had Bongo, who did not fully subscribe to that, you know, and he would always tell me, he'd be like, yo, man, that shit is cool, but that shit ain't gonna get you Grammys or whatever. You gotta, you know, he would always encourage me to, you know, to spread, you know, musically and creatively. And so when you would hear me on a Statik record, it would sound like a Jon Hope and Statik record, right? But then when you would hear me and Bongo, you would hear, you know, heavy musicianship, chords, singing at the hook, melody, things of that nature. And so it got to a point where Statik, you could kind of see through his actions that, you know, he wasn't open to that creative aspect of me. And so he didn't really put all his investment in me because he knew that I had this other side of my creative brand.
But I hate you at the same time. Jon Hope. See the 8-ball, they say more niggas, more crime, more guns, more crack, more lines to sniff, more money from Piff. I know it's funny, but if I make it, they label me a sellout and Uncle Tom. But what about John? I pay my dues without the use of credit cards. I don't want to be confined to the burden that you bring. But deep inside you rejoice when I sing. I'm a product, not a victim of the place that I was born. No glove when I catch 22, I'm torn.
You know what I mean? Like he was like, yo, you know, I rock with you, Jon Hope, da-da-da. But he would never fully give me the same push like Term and Rex and whatnot. Even though there were conversations about it throughout the camp. You know, people on his team would be like, yo, man, you know, Hope, you know, how come Statik ain't, you know what I mean? Like those questions were asked, you know? And so then it just got to a point where, you know, there were, I don't know if it was miscommunications or whatever, but like, you know, he unfollowed me. Then one time, you know, I tried to come up to the studio at Shade 45 to push my project, and you know, it just kind of fell on deaf ears, and that's really what happened, man. And I think it was just creative differences at the time. Ironically, now he's in the space that I was at, you know, almost 10 years ago. Now you see him working with 2 Chainz. You see him, you know, even his production has evolved to something that's a little bit more melodic and a little bit more open and a little bit more trendy, you know what I mean, in his own right. Fast forward, you know, with the release of Hope All As Well, he actually supported the record. He played it on his show. So I think, you know, without speaking to each other, things have come full circle. But yeah, it's funny. Like it was I would say creative differences were the reason why we didn't work together for a long time.
That's unfortunate. And I guess, you know, when you were very young, it might have been naive to call them your second family when if they don't agree with something that you're doing creatively, they stop picking up the phone.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the music industry for you.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And but you know, it's one of those things where that's why relationships are so key, because many of the guys you know, he has a new team now, you know, he's with Rock Nation, but many of the people that were on his initial team, I still talk to, and they supported me, and they still, you know, helped me out, you know, because there was never like a falling out or anything like that. I never disrespected him. I always give him love and whatnot. But, you know, I really like the way that you framed the question, which is why you get this very honest answer. But that's the reality of it. And now, you know, like I said, without speaking to each other, you know, I would like to say we're good, because, you know, he supported the record, you know, THS, and you know, he showed a lot of love multiple times.